I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and welcome to night 4 of the 2025 ChemKnits Chanukah special. Every night of Chanukah, we're dyeing up different colorways on mini skeins of yarn, playing with different colors and techniques. So subscribe so you don't miss any of the fun content. The plan tonight is to do a technique that will have different results on mini skeins than we would get when we dye full skeins of yarn. We're going to be dyeing twisted skeins of yarn to add some resist as we dye them with a tonal layer of color. And then I plan to speckle on top of that base layer to create our colorway. That is the plan. Let's go jump in. Here are a bunch of my mini skeins that are all 75% superwash merino wool, 25% nylon. And I'm gonna have to figure out how to divide it up into batches so then I can figure out how much dye I'll need for each batch. But we also have some full skeins. This is Knit Pick Stroll fingering weight yarn. It is the same fiber content, but from a different mill. Now, and a lot of times if I'm dyeing a colorway on mini skeins versus full skeins, they can be very, very similar. The circumference of these full skeins is longer than the circumference of the minis, which does give one difference. But today there's another difference. Looking at the pattern of these yarns twisted up, you can see that on the full skein we're gonna have larger sections of like whatever color I dye over it. And there's a lot of resist in here, so there's probably gonna be a little less color overall over the entire skein. Whereas here, we're gonna have smaller sections of color. There's a chance that more of the yarn will have dye on it. And so we'll just have to see where we end up. But the fact that I'm gonna get from dyeing these twisted 10-gram minis is not something I can replicate without using some other form of resist on a full skein. But we're gonna approximate it. I feel like it's sometimes worth showing off when using a mini skein and a full skein gives similar results and when it gives different results. One other note as I divide things up, but since I twisted these by hand, the twist patterns and how much twist there is could be slightly different, which could lead to variation between these skeins as well. I want to dye the equivalent of 16 full skeins today, which is 1,600 grams of yarn. If I divide that into 3 bundles, we'll have 2 bundles that are each 530 grams and 1 bundle that's 540 grams. This bundle will be all DK, this one is a blend, and this one has 3 Rogue DK minis in it, which actually I think I am going to rearrange that. There, that makes more sense. Okay, we're good, we're gonna go. But you can see our colors peeking through. Let's take a closer look. What I'm thinking for our color palette today is to use sapphire blue as our main color, and then I'd like to speckle with alpine blue, forest green, and Jacquard's blacklight blue. And I'm waffling on how much of the sapphire blue dye to measure out, because we're dyeing twisted skeins, so therefore it's harder to determine the total amount of dye I'm gonna need to get the color that I want. If I was doing a tonal layer all over all the yarn, I could say, okay, I'll take 2 grams of dye, that should give us like a nice medium blue. But will 2 grams of dye on 500 grams of twisted yarn give a color that's too intense or too dark? Now, the good news is that I'm gonna have a situation where I can easily remove the yarn if I need to. Into my dye bath, I've added the pasta insert for the pot. So that way when we add all of the yarn, we may need to also add more water. We'll see how things go. When we add all of the yarn, I can lift this up to remove all those twisted skeins. I'm not gonna be fishing around for them. And so depending on our results, if I'm liking where the color is and don't want things to get more intense, I can remove the yarn and add some yarn mops and then adjust the amount of color I'm going for. Now, it would probably make sense to do a prototype, but I'm diving in and going for it and hoping that we get the contrast I'm expecting. So I put on my deluxe rubber respirator mask, safety glasses, and gloves, and measured out 2 grams of our sapphire blue dye. I am only measuring out enough dye for the very first batch because depending on how this goes, I may want to add more dye into here. I may want to use less on the next batch, and all of that is going to be okay. I dissolved the dye in hot tap water, not worrying about the total volume of water because we're going to add all of this into our dye pot in a moment. There is, I can turn up the heat a little bit. There's something really, really refreshing about only measuring out enough dye for one project. Oh man. There's some dye powder left in there. I'm going to rinse it out. I had not stirred this very vigorously because I also know we're adding it all into a hot dye bath, which will help things dissolve. And we can give it a good old big stir. Now if the dye bath weren't hot, I could put it back into this, I could dip this cup in to rinse it out, but we're hot. So we're not gonna do that. But now we need some acid. I forgot to add that we started with 32 cups of water, and I wanna add 8 tablespoons. So I'm gonna add half of a cup of white vinegar. A tablespoon volume is 15 milliliters. A quarter cup is 60 milliliters. So there are 4 tablespoons in each quarter cup, and therefore 8 tablespoons in each half cup. And those are the conversions there for you. I did not stir things well, which I'm actually not mad about. And now I'm gonna come and start adding our yarn. And I want to not add it like in one huge clump because I want, there's our big skein. Are you gonna fit? The colors to sort of go all over everything. And I'm gonna need my tongs. Actually, forget the tongs. Let's add some more water. I could not find my tongs, which was part of my problem. Okay, there we go. So far, the color is looking pretty good. Pretty darn good. I mean, the ones up here are definitely going to be the lightest, but that is kind of the color that I was going for. The stroll is soaking up a lot more color. It tends to do that, but I'm not worried or anything. Okay, let's add. Okay, I added about 5 more cups of water. Let's add another 2 tablespoons of white vinegar. And let's go ahead and give this 10 minutes, and then we'll pop back over to check in. Okay, it has been about 10 minutes, and if I lift this up, that is a pretty good color. So I'm gonna go and try to set this aside. I'm letting the water drain. Okay, I'm holding one hand onto it because I don't want to damage my catering steam pan, or sorry, my aluminum pan, but there's a fair amount of color left in here, at least so it looks. But as I dip in 200 grams of yarn mops, this is not that much color. Ooh, it's a very pretty pastel blue. But you can see that most of the color was on our yarn. And in fact, this soaked up what was left really quickly. Awesome. Awesome, awesome. Okay, I'm gonna let this sit for a bit. Okay. Let's remove the yarn mops. I don't know how long they've been in here. Not that long. It's a really pretty color. Is there breaking almost? You know what? I think because there's so little blue up here, because of the natural yellow in the bare yarn, it makes it look almost a little bit like there's breaking, but I think that it's just because the color of the bare yarn is influencing things. Wild! All right, we can pop our steamer insert back in, and you can see we lost a huge volume of water. In the meantime, we have our minis over here. And at a quick look, It's looking like there's a ton of color in there, which is totally fine. It's hot. I'm just opening one up because I want to make sure that we'll be able to see some of our speckles. And I believe that we will. They are going to be really subtle though. This is so pretty. Oh man. Guys, what do I do? See, I think that because I was hoping that the color would strike fast enough. I think because these weren't that thick, the color went in more than I was expecting. And so we ended up with less. Oh my God. That is how you tangle something. Rebecca, find the zip tie. Okay, we did not tangle it. Find the zip tie and hold. We can still add speckles to this. It's just so pretty on its own that I almost want to leave it. But I think if we had a color that struck a little faster, it would give a little more contrast. But I still think we can go ahead and speckle on this. I just don't think our blacklight blue will necessarily fluoresce, but we never know. So we'll have to try and see. Yeah, I guess I can reset to dye our next batch. And off camera, I'm going to measure out 2 grams of the sapphire blue twice. If I had dyed 20-gram twisted mini skeins of yarn, we probably would have had more contrast between the blue on the outside and the blue on the interior. Also, if I had pre-soaked the yarn and had water in there already, the yarn wouldn't have soaked in as much of the blue dye water, and so that could have added even more resist and contrast in there as well. And it was at this moment that I started to hesitate a little bit and think maybe I need to rethink my speckle plan, because my goal for the speckled colors in the palette that I picked was to have the speckles really stand out and not be too subtle against our blue backdrop. I'm gonna add another 8 cups of water with 2 tablespoons of white vinegar in it. And I'm gonna make up some more water at that proportion to have on hand should I need to add it. But I'm gonna let this heat back up because we just added a ton of cold water. And soon I'll be over with the dye so we can do the next round. We're getting a little steamy, but I'm gonna want to let it get a bit hotter. I need to rinse this out a lot. It's amazing how dark the dye can look. It's like this is what you have to keep in mind, that it's this dark before we go ahead and do anything else with it. And what I mean by that is that when I removed it, it looked like there was a lot of pigment, but you could see from our leave no dye behind yarn, there really wasn't that much. In that little bit of time, we're having some good movement. I think we're good to go. Let me start grabbing our yarn. Now, in the end, I don't think I'm going to be keeping all of the different batches separate from one another. In the end, I think that this is the mixed batch of fingering, sock, and DK. In the end, I think all of this is going to be sort of mixed together with the batch that was just one or just the other. And so I'll try to see if I notice anything about this particular batch let me set a timer, to see any difference between the fingering and DK and how they're absorbing. The DK is a little bit thicker, but this batch has 540 grams of yarn instead of 530, but that should not make a huge difference for anything. And so no, I did not adjust the number of grams of dye. Sorry, I guess you can hear me taking my gloves off in the background. I did not adjust the total number of grams of dye accordingly because it's such a small little difference. But anyway, I'll see you in 10 minutes. Okay. I'm gonna lift this up. Okay, I dumped it, let the water drain, and then dumped that yarn into the sink. And now I'm coming over with our yarn mop. And we're just building the color up. I didn't initially intend to do like a dip dyed yarn mop, but sort of liking the way that that is going. This is giving us like a lovely, lovely blue. Okay. I'm gonna let this sit like 5 minutes or so, and then we'll get ready for our next round. I'm gonna have to decide if I'm gonna wanna bring these in for a third time, or if I wanna let this be it for here and then do like 100 grams and whatever is left. We need that last bit of water that I had already prepped. Once again, that was 8 cups of water and 2 tablespoons of vinegar. Adding our dye, and I'm gonna rinse this out. And we'll wait for things to heat back up. Time to add all the yarn. I did not put my gloves back on, but I do have my safety glasses on. On a day where I'm dyeing a bunch of yarn, I often will have my safety glasses just perched on top of my head, which makes it really easy to remember to put them back on. Okay, and I need to set a timer for 10 minutes. Now, I could remove it at this point and there would probably be more light patches around, but I wanted the like intense bright blue. Okay, last time. Okay, gonna quickly set this aside. And this time I'm bringing over some fresh yarn. This time it's only 100 grams to soak up the majority of this dye. Okay, and this color is coming in a little bit slower. I was gonna bring over the other yarns, but I had moved the zip ties down so to avoid color transfer. It's funny, the color on the new skein is already deeper than the colors on the older ones, which surprises me a little bit. But it's not a bad thing. Okay, adding more of the yarn. We're soaking that up. Okay, I'm gonna add everything in. I'm gonna let this heat for 30 minutes. Once it's done heating, I'll remove the yarn, set it aside to cool, and then we'll wash that off camera. And in the meantime, I need to let all this other yarn cool off. And it's gonna take a while. I mean, doing all this dyeing happened pretty quickly, all things considered, but the reason why it's going to take a long time is because the yarn on top might cool off a bit, but then there's yarn in the middle and things are still damp. Ooh, I see we've got some more white there in the middle. Oh, that's cool. Okay, gonna wait. Oh, but either we'll untwist things probably later tonight and then maybe do the speckles tomorrow, but we'll see. I opened up 10 of our micro skeins, and this is the first one that I had opened before. It was like, oh man, there's not a lot of white, but also because I moved this one around a lot, the like patchiness has kind of averaged out a little bit. So there are some that have more white, some that have less, but that's all good. What I need to do from here is take them and add zip ties to them. And I'll show you me actually opening some up in a moment. I was just waiting to finish filming a clip for another night of Chanukah, and so I figured I would open some of these up. But now when we go to add our speckles, the thing that is going to be a little bit tricky, and it could have been nice to have it opened up as I had to then add the speckles on, I'm gonna need to just like try to spread it out as much as possible. And so it's possible not every mini will have every color of speckles, but we'll get there in a bit. For now, I just need to work on opening them up and trying not to stretch things out. Now, as for our full skein, I'm expecting to have a lot more white. Yes, there's some like super huge patches, but again, think about the difference in the size between that full skein and the mini. You know, the difference in the thickness here means that when we go ahead and open them up, we had way more resist over here. And so I hope that that is something that is helpful to see, because Now as I go and open up this one that has very little white, then we open up this one, it's still a tiny bit warm, but there's just a big, big difference for what we have there. And I'm using some of my pigmented zip ties because I don't really mind if we end up with some blue transfer or even a little bit of green transfer, since we will have a green that we're adding on. I'm not worried about that, so let's go and keep opening up these minis. As I open up the MiniSkeins, note how I'm doing this very carefully, counting out a batch of 10 and then opening them up, sort of layering them on top of each other so that way I can add that zip tie later on. I am being so unbelievably careful because when the yarn is wet, it would be easier to like really stretch it out of proportion, and it's less bouncy in the wet form. And so the way that I showed off that I do this, I did a short, the way I showed that I do this in dry minis, and that'll be included in the Chanukah vlog later, but the way I do that all at once, I wouldn't try on wet yarn because I think things are more likely to get a little bit tangled. But pop on a podcast and then this makes quick work. And of course I'll finish the rest off camera. To figure out how I felt about the colors and the proportions of our speckles, I mixed our dyes with some citric acid powder and brought out some 20-gram MiniSkeins to use as our prototype and see what I thought about those colors on a white base before going ahead and trying them on our blue backdrop. After I added the dye, I steam set everything for 30 minutes. You guys, it is so hard right now because I love this so much, and it's so hard. This is also really beautiful with the colors, and I went heavier here than I planned to go on there. I gotta just go for it. I gotta go for it. I got all the way to this point where I'm like, okay, we're gonna go ahead, put this here, and we're gonna start speckling. But then I'm just looking at this and loving it so much. I love the little depths of all the blues, and I can't bring myself to do it. I know that this is a very simple colorway, except for the fact that I could really only make this on MiniSkeins. If I wanted to try to get this on full skeins, with like this level of modeling, I'd probably have to do some kind of like watercolor or other kind of technique. But I can't do it. What I am gonna do is go ahead and steam set all of this yarn. It is okay to have a plan and then change your mind and decide you want to do something else and that you want to create something else. One of my concerns here was that I loved that blue tonal we got from the Twisted MiniSkeins, and that if I did heavier speckles on top of that, we might lose a little bit of that dimension from the blue and not feel that coming through as much, because the colors I have for the speckles, some of them are similarly toned, and I didn't want to lose that beautiful variegated modeled quality that we had there. Maybe if I had done the blue a bit more pastel or had the acid higher in the pot to have a little bit more contrast, I wouldn't have felt the hesitation that I had here today. But even though it's fun to like go forward and see the vision through to the conclusion, it is okay to stop when you like something beautiful. But you can let me know down in the comments if you would have carried on or if you would have held back. Okay. We are nice and steamy. I probably could have filled this up more, but given that the yarn is cold, and I didn't want like the center in here to, I mean, it's nice and warm. I have no idea how long it would take things to warm up. I didn't want that to get, to stay too cold. I wanted to make sure we had enough heat. So this just made sense. Okay, and let's go ahead. I'm gonna remove this to check our water level, and I'm gonna add more water because since the seal is not as good, when we're using this pasta insert as a steamer basket, yes, you can fit more yarn, but the water level underneath is going to be lower to start, and then it's going to just remain lower, if that makes sense. Okay, so 45 minutes and we'll be back, because rather than just steam escaping, you know, through the little steam hole, it can escape around the sides, I think, as well. And so it's just a little more going on. Okay, here we go. Ooh, I think we had some transfer of the blue, maybe? Or actually, it could have been almost like a glaze feel from earlier. Hard to say. Now, it helps that the yarn itself is so wet. I have the heat on low. Removing this, we still have plenty of water in there. But I will add more because I'm about to do another project. But once I let all the yarn I just removed cool, then we can wash that. Let's wash our yarn. For full transparency's sake, it is the next day. Because, yeah, I had a lot going on yesterday, and today is going to be an epic wash day of MiniSkeins. Oh man, I am so obsessed with this color. Like the light and the dark and the way it alternates. I think it's gonna work up in such a beautiful way. And I keep talking about how if I did like my watercolory scribble dyeing technique, I think that's the way I could get something the closest to this. But there's a regularity to the way that these colors sort of undulate together because of the twist that there was. And so, oh gosh, I would love to hear your suggestions for replicating this and having it feel so soft. But anyway, gosh, okay, wait, I guess on a full skein, if I took a, like, you know, the 5 meter skein and twisted that and then dyed it, then I could get something similar. But I don't know if it's worth that level of effort to reskein like a self-striping yarn, basically. But anyway, there is no color bleeding. I'm gonna go put the yarn through my spin dryer and hang it up to dry. But even before we go into the conclusions, it is okay to have a vision and a plan and to hit an intermediate and just stop. And that is something that I definitely struggle with. It is hard for me to hit this point and stop. But I think it would be beautiful if I had combined this with what I thought I was going to do, but I think that I ended up with something amazing. I think with the way I have the yarn laid out right here, you can see the similarities between our full 100 gram skein versus a 100 gram bundle of MiniSkeins that were twisted. And so you can see that like repeating like section of white that we have there that is beautiful. But because this was thicker and had fewer twists in it, we have more white patches overall. Now, I had an interesting comment, I think on Instagram on our video recently, where someone said that, you know, it was about me dyeing twisted skeins. And they're like, man, I would be really pissed if I thought I was getting saturated yarn and then there was a bunch of white in it. I hope you provide a swatch. Now, when I dye twisted skeins, part of the intent is to leave that white or pastel behind. So that way we can over dye it or leave it as we did here, which gives us this high contrast between our blue and our white. And so this is also why I always provide pictures of the flat lays like this and not just the yarn twisted up. And I just want to show that even retwisted, you can clearly see that we have a lot of white visible. Over the course of this Chanukah special, there will be times when I dye MiniSkeins and full skeins in the same colorway where we're gonna end up with colorways that are nearly identical, nearly dupes, or where maybe reskeining the full skein and making it shorter so it would be the same circumference as the MiniSkeins would account for any differences that you would get in the final colorways. Because if the skein is longer and you have 3 colors, each color section might be a little bit larger than they are on the MiniSkeins, which is a difference, but a more subtle one. Although actually, there's a video there, I think I did a dip dyeing with different lengths of skeins that were MiniSkeins once, and then did swatches. But I feel like I need to do a video of different size skeins with the same type of colorway and then do swatches. If that's something you want to see, please let me know down in the comments. And editing, Rebecca, I am so sorry. But it's really fun when showing that you can get some more extreme differences with the technique. And so sometimes if I wanted to get this result on the MiniSkeins, I could by twisting the entire bundle, and that would bring me something closer to here. So there is a way to go that direction, but I want to play with trying to get this type of colorway on a full skein in the future. And once again, editing Rebecca, my apologies. Editing Rebecca is the one that writes down notes and then has to figure out how to do those projects. That's future Rebecca's problem. I know I've spent a lot of these conclusions talking about the difference between the minis and the full skeins, but let's take a moment to appreciate this beauty that we have here and imagine the wonderful low contrast but modeled effect this will have when you knit something up. And I think that this could turn into a gorgeous project. And I think this might be the one circumstance where, unless I can find another way to get the effect, where I would use multiple MiniSkeins in one project because I love this colorway so much. Normally, I don't think it would be worth all the extra ends that you have to weave in. But sometimes, for a particular technique, you gotta do what you gotta do. And imagine striping this with like a solid blue. And I'm not talking about a tonal like our yarn mops, which are very beautiful. The dip dyed effect, which I don't have lined up in any kind of way, but the dip dyed effect is really lovely. It's very subtle, but it's kind of the wrong blue. I mean, there's elements of the blue in here, but it's not the right blue I have in mind to do as a contrasting color. You definitely could, but I think it would be fun to have a blue that matches the deepest blue to have as the stripe. So then the contrast you have is in those lighter patches of our modeled colorway. And I think that that would be really, really fun to do. But now I need to go and twist up all of these minis. I know I've already shown you some of the twisted minis, but I wanted to show some bigger beauty shots of everything twisted and the yarn mops twisted, so that way you can see. And I just have to say again, I am so happy I listened to my gut and did not speckle over this. I think that with the full skeins that have that much white in them, those I would have been happy to speckle over and add that other layer of color. Even though I do think that the full skeins are beautiful on their own, I just think speckles on top of these MiniSkeins would reduce this interesting subtlety that we have here. And I adore the way this yarn turned out, and I hope you love it too. So are you glad that I stopped here, or would you have carried on and done the speckles? I feel like my hesitation was twofold. One, I didn't want to lose this beautiful modeling we have in the blue. And two, I wanted the speckles to be able to be a star and to stand out against the backdrop and not get lost in this blue that we have here. Now, tonight is night 4 of Chanukah, which means we have 4 more nights of MiniSkein dyeing coming up. Each night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, there'll be a new premiere. But after the 8th night of Chanukah, there's 2 bonus yarn dyeing videos where I'm going to dye full skeins of yarn that were mystery colorways for Chanukah. And then the 3rd bonus video is going to be a behind the scenes vlog. And in the vlog, that's where I normally ruminate over what I want to do with the colorways, or how I want one colorway to be different from what I'm doing other nights. And I give those behind the scenes thoughts that I gave you a lot of in this video, because while filming this video, I changed my mind and I had to then put it together into a cohesive story. Now, you might be wondering, what did I do with those speckles that I mixed? Why were none of those bonus skeins shown in the conclusion of this video? Why were none of those bonus mini skeins wrapped in the Chanukah samplers? Well, you'll see those speckles again. You'll see those colors again. And so I know this is a little bit of a spoiler of what is coming tomorrow, but you don't know exactly how I'm going to be using those colors. And I will add that when I made this whole shift and change, which the shift and change did not just affect this video, it affected many other videos that I had to film. I had already started dyeing the yarn for night 5. So please let me know what you think I'm gonna do with all of this for tomorrow night's video. And while you're here, please give the video a thumbs up, subscribe, comment. This is the biggest way you can help support all of the content here. And if you want other ways to help support the content, go to the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop. I have hundreds of skeins of yarn that are ready to ship that have been featured in my YouTube videos. Plus, there are still some Chanukah samplers available, and so you can end up with a mini skein of yarn from tonight, plus all of the other nights. Each Chanukah sampler comes with 100 grams of yarn, 9 wrapped packages, 8 10-gram minis, and a bonus 20-gram mini skein. There's a lot of fun extras in there, a signed Chanukah card from me, and you can see more details in the listing in the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop. Or you can wait for the behind the scenes vlog where I will show off everything I created for Chanukah all together. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and I really do try to share my whole thought process when I'm working on a project, whether I stick with my plan, and sometimes you'll see a lot of times where I want to stop in the middle and I push through, because maybe what I'm doing is an experiment, and so maybe I need to see what the results are. But then there's other times like today where I stop at the intermediate because you know what? I just can't bring myself to modify this further. And that is all okay. And so I really hope that you enjoy hearing all the ruminations and changing my mind and everything that I do as I do it. I will see you back here tomorrow night for night 5. Thank you so much for watching and happy Chanukah.